Back in 1939, Batman made his first appearance in Detective Comics number 27. Now, I've always been really curious about this book. Seems like whenever I talk to people, they've never read the whole thing. They've maybe read the Batman story that's in it, or they've heard of it, or they've seen the cover, but that's about as far as it goes. So today, what we're going to do... What in the world? Oh man, not again. You see, this actually happens a lot more often than you'd probably expect. Every so often a vampire will show up and be like, oh hey, you guys settled the town since I've been gone, and you know, it's kind of a huge pain in the butt whenever it happens. But this time, I have a comic that was given to me on loan that might be able to help. Ah, there it is. Okay, I found it. Here it is. Yeah, that's this obviously isn't the cover for the book. There's a lot of really cool stuff that's happening within this book that I want to talk about. And I want to talk about it before I show you the cover. Deathwatch is a new independently published comic that's written by Jared Gifford and it's illustrated by Chad Hardin. Now, Jared Gifford, he's cut his teeth on other indie comics. His biggest one is Darren, Captain of the Stars, and that was his own self-published book. But then Chad Hardin, he's the guy who's bringing the star power to this. Because yeah, he does independent comics, but he's probably most famous for Harley Quinn. And like really popular Harley Quinn, not just like, you know, a story here or there before she became like huge. No, so you know how Harley Quinn has had like big eras of character history that she's gone through. Like at the beginning, she was kind of a lackey for the Joker, and then she became an important lackey, and then she became her own solo supervillain, and then she went into Task Force X, and then afterwards she got out and she became a Deadpool-style superhero vigilante. Yeah, that last one, the Deadpool-style superhero vigilante, that was drawn by Chad Hardin. So you have these two guys who are just friends. One of them made it big into big-time comics, and they wanted to make Deathwatch, and they funded it themselves. That's a huge thing. If nothing else, that should speak to just the amount of passion that is in this book. So I say, let's go ahead, let's rip this open. This is the back. I'm not going to show you the front. I have things to say about the front. Ooh, and I'm making a mess. Let's hop into the book. Let's see what's in here. Let's check it out. So first off, the book starts like any other random Tuesday that just so happens to happen. You see, an ancient cult shows up out of nowhere and then decides that they're going to resurrect this evil Count Dracula type character named Count Darius. And Count Darius shows up out of nowhere and he comes back to his castle, but it turns out in the 200 years that his castle was gone, some people set up a town there, and he decided, you know what, everyone who's in this town now belongs to me. You're now my peasants, and I want to take a whole bunch of taxes from you. Not as much as the US government. I mean, we're not monsters, but I'll take a bunch of taxes from you guys, and you're going to have to sacrifice a virgin to me every couple of weeks or so. Kind of like what normal Tuesday stuff. And so this whole town is just like, well, I guess whatever. I guess we'll just roll over for this vampire guy and let him just walk all over us and whatever else happens. But then the hero walks in. Let me tell you a little bit about the hero of this book. His name is Ryan Cushing, named after Peter Cushing, who he was in Star Wars. Though the reason why he's the namesake of this character is because of his work in horror movies. Ryan Cushing just kind of kicks down the saloon door after stepping off the stagecoach, just kind of cowboys his way into the saloon, into the bar, and says, "I hear you have a vampire problem, and I might just be willing to help." if you'll just go ahead and give me that information, I will take care of it for you. Yeah, maybe not. I talked to the writer of it, I talked to Jared, and I brought up that, in my interpretation, he sounds like Clint Eastwood. And he insisted that that's not the case. He is British. I mean, he uses British slang and whatever else, so he doesn't sound like a cowboy. But you know what? To that I say this. Comics don't make noise. He can sound like whatever I want him to sound like. Also, I just got done watching the Dollars trilogy, and those are fantastic movies. And I got a lot of the same vibes from this guy. So he does have that vibe going for him. Anyway, he walks in and says that he wants to take care of their vampire problem, but the whole town is all like, no, we can't anger the vampire. He'll come down on all of us and it'll be bad. And so he's like, well, are you sure? And they're like, yeah, we'll give you a room to stay in, but you gotta be gone by the morning. So he says, well, I guess this is the best I can do. Professor Cushing goes up to the upstairs. He sees a rat from The Last of Us, and he's just setting out what he needs for the night. But then this boy runs up and says, hey, so I want to talk to you and I want to tell you everything, but I can't do it here. Meet me outside at midnight and I can tell you whatever you need to know. And so he does. He goes outside, meets the kid over outside somewhere at midnight and says, okay, what's up? And the kid says, well, you see, the vampire, he showed up a couple days ago. He lives up in that castle. I would really appreciate it if you would go take care of him, because unlike the rest of the people in this town, I don't really want to roll over for him, and also my sister is next on the chopping block, so, you know, go do your thing, Mr. Vampire Hunter action hero person. So Reiner grabs some climbing gear and he climbs up to the top of the castle, and when he gets there, he's attacked by like this weird Demogorgon wolf dog thing, and it lunges at him and it's all growling and it's like drooling everywhere and it's super gross. And then Reiner, he's all like, I don't think so, and he pulls out his bullwhip and goes all Indiana Jones on this thing, and that's not working. So he pulls out a sword and he fights it, and then he kicks the wolf over the edge of the castle and it falls and plummets to its death. It's like, whoa, that was fun. It's like, whew. But we don't slow down, because as soon as he does that, the big bad evil guy, the Count Darius, he shows up and he's all like, you shouldn't have come here, now I'm going to eat you. And Reiner's like, I don't think you're going to, because I believe in doing the good thing, and the good thing is getting rid of vampires like you. That's the thing about Reiner that I found really cool and I really appreciated, is that he is very much an aspirational hero. He's not doing things because he's trying to make up for something. He's fighting vampires because it's the right thing to do, and I can appreciate that. I appreciate a good hero who's just altruistic and just wants to do the good thing because it's right. So they fight for a bit. Count Darius starts slashing with his like claw-like hands, just trying to rip Reiner to shreds, but he can't touch him. He's just too fast. Reiner keeps rolling around. He has all of his tools ready to go, but then just right when he almost has the upper hand, he just gets knocked down. All of his stuff goes flying, and he crawls over to try and grab the cross that he brought with him, because, you know, that's how you kill vampires. You have one of those. But right before he can grab it, the vampire's thralls come in and they grab him by the legs and start dragging him into the castle. And then I don't know what happens next. I want to know what happens next, but that's the end of the first issue. I have to wait for issue 2. There's just so much that was going on here. So let's talk about what's going on here, because this is a really, really cool book, and I was really excited about this. I didn't think I would like this book or connect with this book nearly as much as I ended up doing. From a story standpoint, it's really, really solid. I'd have to get really nitpicky if I wanted to try and find anything that was wrong with either the writing or the dialogue or anything like that. There's a prologue at the beginning of the book. I didn't talk about it like at all. I just kind of glanced over it. It takes place a couple hundred years before the actual story does, and it's really cool that it does, because it kind of proves that this is a world that has been lived in. It's been used. And so when they set that expectation at the very beginning that this is a world that has had this problem reoccurring, and I believe it. So when Reiner shows up and he starts fighting vampires, I believe that he does that because I've seen that it happens in the past over and over and over. So I think that's its biggest strength, is that it built up this world that I'm just really excited about. I've never been a huge fan of horror movies or horror stories or anything like that. I always found them just be kind of, I don't know, just not my thing. But for some reason, this particular book really did grab my imagination. I've been trying to figure out why that is, and I think what it is it's a difference in who the hero is. You see, this isn't like your slasher, teenagers in the park kind of horror. You're not following a hero that we don't believe can do things. We're not following someone who's inept. We're following someone who has nothing but endless skill just available and open to them. Yeah, it's less Friday the 13th and more Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, because we believe that Indiana Jones can solve the problem. The scariest part of Temple of Doom is that brief moment right before the third act where we don't believe it. And that's kind of what this is here. It's like, yeah, Reiner doesn't seem to be in a very easygoing spot by the end of the story. But dang it, I believe that he can get out of it. Plus, as I already mentioned, he's an altruistic hero, which I really appreciate and is really nice to see in an adventure story like this. It would have been really easy to make him like this jaded, uncaring kind of character in this world that is already kind of jaded and uncaring, but the fact that he is just good, it makes him stand out in this world, and I really, really appreciate that. When all of the other characters are just giving up and are losing all kinds of hope, you have a hero that has nothing but hope. And I love just the art style they picked in this, because again, it would have been really easy to fall into the trap of making everything really dark and really realistic and like turn the contrast way down, make everything really subdued, but he doesn't do that. The characters are just cartoony enough to where they don't feel uncanny, and the environments are in a lot of ways more realistic than the characters, which there's a principle that was brought up in cartooning by Scott McCloud in his book Understanding Comics. You really should read that. I love that book. He talks about a set of lines to be, as in relate to, and a set of lines to explore, as in to not relate to. When your character is simple, it's easy to relate to them and you become that character, but when the environment is complicated, it makes it easy to explore. And Chad does a really good job of finding that balance there. And then the colors. Colors cannot be understated here, and they aren't understated. They're really bright, they're really vibrant, which I think really helped make some of this stuff feel really otherworldly, like the Demogorgon dog thing. The Demogorgon dog thing, he feels scarier because he's bright and colorful. So the story is solid, the art is solid. Really good book. There's something that really brings it down though, and you could probably guess what that is, because I want to show it to you at the beginning. And that is the cover. And the cover, it's kind of broken. This is it. Now, I mentioned this only very briefly, that there was a part in the book where a cult shows up and they bring back Count Darius for some unknown reason that I'm sure will be explained in later issues. And that's kind of what this cover is supposed to represent, but I don't think it was the right choice. In fact, I think this is actually a huge misstep. When you think about the greatest covers in comic book history, things like Amazing Spider-Man number 50 or Action Comics number 1 is a fantastic example. They have something in common, every great cover you've ever seen. They represent the emotional tone of the story, if not the actual events. And they kind of tease the actual events. It's like clickbait. It's like making a thumbnail for a YouTube video. You know, You can't possibly show the whole thing, but you can create an image that is enticing enough to where you want to see more. But at the same time, it has to represent the story that it is the cover of. The only time this doesn't seem to happen is if it's like a variant cover of some sort. So like in Action Comics #1, that picture, it does take place exactly in the comic, but it's a little bit more highlighted when it's on the cover. It's a little bit more extreme, which makes it a lot more enticing. We feel the emotion of the moment, and then when we open up the book, it delivers on that promise. Or Spider-Man #50, while the event that's portrayed on the cover doesn't strictly happen that way within the book, the emotion does. You feel it. It means something to you. It says something to your soul, and you understand what this book is going to be about. And when you open up the book and you read it, it delivers on that promise. Unfortunately, I just don't think that this cover delivers on that promise. And that's a detrimental thing to this. If I saw this sitting on the shelf in a comic shop, I would pass by it. And I would completely miss it. Because it looks like this isn't a horror book, it looks like a trashy vampire romance book. And I don't want to read that. I don't want to read a trashy romantic vampire story. That's just not me. And so I miss out on it. Whereas if someone did see it and was looking for that kind of thing, they're going to pick it up, they're going to be disappointed as well, because that's not what the book is. It's a high action adventure book with a really, really cool action superhero in it. This does open up an opportunity to talk about a much bigger problem and a much bigger question about what independent publishers need to do to get a fraction of what the big companies get. And I was there when they were selling this at Comic-Con, and I do know for a fact that covers like these did sell more copies, which is unfortunate, but that's a conversation for another day. But here's the thing, and this is the reason why I'm harping on this so much, is that I believe Death Watch could be the next big indie comic. You know how The Boys blew up and become huge, or The Walking Dead a few years prior to that became a huge phenomenon, and everyone was curious about it, everyone was reading it, everyone was buying it, and you couldn't keep The Walking Dead on shelves. I think Death Watch could do it. It would work really well as an animated series. It would work really well as a video game. If that happens and it grows and becomes huge and it becomes a big deal, and it becomes a Netflix show and everyone's looking it up, everyone's looking up Death Watch #1, this is the cover they're going to come across, and it doesn't represent the series and it doesn't represent the story. That's the thing. But if my biggest problem with the book is that I think the cover was a big misstep, this book is doing pretty good for itself. So who would I recommend this book to? Who would I recommend Death Watch to? I would recommend Death Watch to anyone who is a huge fan of classic horror movies, is a huge inspiration for it, but also specifically Castlevania. If you love Castlevania, you'll love Death Watch. It's right there. It is right there with Castlevania. It has the same kind of tone, it has the same kind of atmosphere, it's great. And on top of that, if you like action movies like Temple of Doom, I mentioned Temple of Doom prior, there you go. That's the kind of person I would recommend this to. If you like that kind of aesthetic, you're going to love Death Watch. So that's what I got for you today. Now, I feel like I got enough information on how to solve the immediate problem taking place. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, but you go ahead and talk to me in the comments. Tell me what you thought about this book, what you think about the whole concept of this, and until next time, thank you for joining me. Have a great day. Now go forth, do cool things.